Don Kriegbaum is president of Dayton N-Track and superintendent of the N-Gauge division of the Crossroads Railroad Club in Vandalia, Ohio. In 1950, at age 9, he started in the hobby. His dad bought him a Marx train set for Christmas.
Well, that Christmas day, needless to say, I run that train practically all day. It also made a lot of noise, and that evening it became very quiet in our basement. And my father had come down to check on me.
Don was taking the engine apart in an attempt to make it run faster when his father gave him an ultimatum.
Well, his comment was simple. If you can't put it back together and make it run, that's the end of your train business. That evening later on, with a lot of effort and time, I was able to put the engine back together and make it run again. Somewhat disappointed because it did not run any faster than in the beginning, and that's what my whole goal was. So I have been in the repair business since day one.
The wall-to-wall layout measures 12 by 14 feet. 6 trains can run simultaneously on 4 independent loops. The layout contains over 120 switches, 130 blocks, and 4,000 feet of color-coded wire. Atlas track is used.
I like to capture the realism of a real scene. I don't model any particular time frame or setting because I like them all too well. And the whole idea here is when the trains are running on the layout is for you to think you're out in the real life scene watching the railroad.
Don designed a homemade block system which allows multiple trains to run on the same loop.
The cities on the layout are able to have passenger trains stop and start automatically with no help from the operator.
The automated block system works this way. The passenger train comes into the station. It contacts the first reed and throws the switch behind it. This keeps the freight train from running into the back of the passenger train. The freight train starts when the passenger train contacts the second reed. When the passenger train hits the third reed, it stops at the station. The freight train then makes a complete revolution and contacts the fourth reed. This starts the passenger train and completes the process. For the system to work, one train must be moving all the time.
You got to have a movement to be able to turn things on and off. Instead of using your fingers to turn the light switch on and off, we've got a train with a magnet underneath the first carts doing the same job. Everything on this layout, except the mural on the wall, I have done myself. I had a commercial artist paint the mural on the wall simply for one reason. When I was young and in school and in art class, I drew a doghouse one time and the dog wouldn't go in, so I know where my talents are when it comes to art.
Don hired artist Sue Aldrin to paint the mural, which took her 42.5 hours. The mural spans 38 feet around the layout. Mountains are made of plaster Paris and styrofoam. Styrofoam is preferred.
When you're actually carving them, working with them, if you pour plaster Paris on there tonight and it drips on your carpet, you've got a real mess. Your floor can become covered with blue styrofoam, but in 2 seconds later with a vacuum cleaner, it's gone completely. Plaster Paris is almost a thing of the past. With the new model railroaders, there's no weight to styrofoam. And if you're carrying a 2x6 layout, it weighs 40 pounds, and then you put 25 pounds of plaster on it, you got a heavy layout. Well, if you got a 40-pound layout and you got 1.5 pounds of styrofoam, no difference.
Don started with a 4x8 layout, but he wanted to run longer trains. So he enlarged the layout by building around the walls and adding 3 bridges. He went from pulling 30 freight cars to pulling 80, but the bridges still posed one problem.
Train derailments, if you happen to forget the bridges down and run the train off the end of the bridge. And that can happen, believe me.
Don's maintenance system for engines is superb.
Every engine on my layout's got a number on the bottom of it. Every time I do anything to the engine, it's documented in a book. Every 6 months, I pull the engines, lube oil and clean, and if there's another problem, I correct it. So even if the engine's 25 years old, it runs like it did the day it was new. When you have quite a few engines, you lose count of which ones have been serviced and which ones have not. 1975, I started the system, and by 82 or 3, I started to see a real improvement in the operation of my railroad simply because the trains always run like they do when they're new. My engines are my little performers, and when they perform excellent, I'm satisfied. And when they don't perform excellent, I'm very dissatisfied. You put the fun in it when you keep things running right.
Don also has some rare items in his collection.
In my hand, I have an example of one of the very first N-gauge engines, which was very primitive, had electric motor, but it also run on the rubber band rib system. This happens to be a Lone Star 080 steam engine made in about 1960. This is a rare old MRC, no longer in production, made in 1972 and 1973. MRC only produced at that time 4 or 5 different type of engines. But what makes this engine quite rare from other engines is it is one of the very few engines in N-gauge that has a live working smoke unit.
Once a year, the Dayton area holds open house. The long trains impress the viewers.
One of the comments I always have is, oh man, look at that freight train. How many cars are on there? And by the end of an open house night, I usually know there's generally between 72 and 76 cars because they've been counted 72 times by 72 different people. And the kids are great for that. Older people, particularly in the age group that were in the steam era, when they come in and see my layout running with all steam, they relate to that because they've seen that 40 years ago. And it's fun when you see a grandfather walk in here with a grandson and say, see that big boy running? I used to see those in real life. And this little grandson has never seen one in his entire life. And that's the fun part of the hobby for me, to make people happy.
Don's 2 daughters enjoy model railroading.
It's a fun hobby, and it's for kids and grown-ups both. Some people won't let the kids become involved in a big layout, but it's the best thing you can do. Keeps your family close together. Have a lot of fun together. We go to shows together. Each one of my daughters have also learned how to use tools, how to wire, how to solder, how to hammer, how to use a screwdriver.
His 14-year-old daughter, Bonnie, built this portable N-gauge layout.
When I come into my basement in the evening and walk into the railroad room, No matter what kind of day I had at work, no matter whether the dog bit the neighbor, the wife wrecked a car, or the kids skipped school, or whatever, I totally forget about all my problems. And that is the best therapy in the world. I happen to be a letter carrier, and I carry a lot of doctors and lawyers on my route, and psychologists, and I talk to a few of them, and they'll tell you 80% of the medical problems in this world are between the two ears and not really a problem. Over the 20-year period, I've developed hundreds of friendships, and there's some very fine, talented people within the hobby, and people that would do anything for you. At this stage of it, I enjoy the friendship as much as I do the railroad itself. I've made a lot of fine friends.
Don Kriegbaum gives seminars on operation and repair. He encourages model railroaders to constantly maintain their layouts.
Run your layout every day as if you're going to have an open house that night. Just think, gee, tomorrow I got a bunch of people coming. So if something happens, you wouldn't want that to happen when you had a group of people there, so you would take the time to correct it. And like I say, if you start having a lot of derailments or stalls or whatever on your layout, then you're going to become aggravated and go buy a set of golf clubs. And people do.
Frank Parks has a stunning 11 by 13 layout located in his spare bedroom.
My two boys had it before my youngest one, after he left, then I went on and took the room over. Sort of kind of nudged him out.
The layout has one main loop for a single main line and two single dog bone loops.
And I can run two trains on two independent control panels, or I can run use one control panel and run the total layout.
Over 30 switches operate on the layout. 4 power packs power the railroad, and a 5th walk-around with memory also can be used.
Growing up as a child, my grandfather, he lived in Texas. We used to ride the Santa Fe out to Texas, and I fell in love with it. My major road names are Union Pacific and Santa Fe, but I've also started with the Southern Pacific.
We asked Frank if his wires were color-coded.
Yeah, my code. There's no true color code. It's my color coding. If you open up the panel, you just see wires. But I know where they are, you know.
When Frank started N-gauge railroading, someone remarked that N doesn't allow for much detail.
You know, when I was told that, I said, okay, watch me. And so I just really went to work on it. And what I try to do within this room is have various scenes. Something when someone will come in and look at it, they had various things that would really capture their eye. And then prove that you can get some, you know, you can have quite a bit of detail in N-gauge.
To create the ground cover, Frank applied earth tone latex paint, then sprinkled on Woodland Scenic's ground cover. While the paint was still wet, he sprayed the surface with a matte medium and added more ground cover.
I tried various things with the trees. I have some trees which are real twigs from the yard, some are the metal trees which I painted, and I added the woodland scenery material to it.
Impressive water scenes are featured on the layout. Frank uses 2 techniques.
One is the gloss medium. I paint the bottom colors of the type of water for the area, and then I feather out the edges, making it a lighter brown, you know, like it's showing the shorelines. And then I just spread the gloss medium over it.
When the gloss medium initially is applied, It looks like white paste, but it dries clear with a radiant shine.
Then I use Virotex, and where it's a two-part epoxy. And again, I painted the bottom of the river, like the dock area, and then I feathered the edges out on it. But then I took polyester and I mixed just a little bit, a very little bit, in with the Virotex to give it the sort of a tint, you know, muddy-like look. And then I poured that over the painted bottom, and so you can kind of see through the muddy look and then see the bottom, and then it gave it that, you know, where it had that depth.
The results truly are convincing.
I've actually had people to come over and take their finger and, you know, oh, I thought that was wet. And, you know, they really think it's, you know, real water.
Inspired by the work of John Allen, Frank built these bridges from scratch.
And he had one scene where he had trains going across like a gully, and I've always wanted one. And then I spent one Sunday evening with super glue, and I just went to work cutting the strip from balsa wood, and, you know, until I got what I wanted. When people would come in the room, they would look at this and it would really catch their eyes. My dock area, the water, but this, they would really, you know, they'd look at this, and sometimes they'd get on their knees and they'd see it. So I said, why don't I take it to the floor? Give them something really to look at. Again, when I work on the layout, I try it all.
Frank uses a logical method for determining grade.
I used the cookie cutter style as far as cutting out the plywood. I ran a train up and down and see if it worked. No true calculation. That's all I did. I just cut it out, laid it out, and then took the various engines and made sure they were able to climb it with the trains that I wanted.
The majority of engines running are Atlas and Cato.
Now, Atlas has some pretty good engines out there. I have a majority of Atlas. And the Cato, I like them because they run real smooth and they have the flywheel.
The flywheel allows for smoother acceleration and deceleration.
You might have a certain area where you don't have a true connection or true current passing through one of your frogs or your crossovers. With the flywheel within the engine, they just glide right over it.
Computer technology is becoming more advanced in model railroading. Although Frank likes some of the applications available, he does not prefer total control by way of computer.
The type I don't like is where you set it up to the computer and it's automatic where the train will start and stop and those kind of things. You seem to lose some of the realism. And the way I have it now with the block setup I have, I like actually being able to control it and slow it down.
Frank's wife, Beverly, supports his love for the hobby.
She loves it because she knows where I'm located. I've actually heard her at times that he's in the train room, rather, I know where he is. She comes in at times and like a guessing game, well, what have I added new? And sometimes she says, I haven't seen that. And it's been there for a while. And then she'll get frustrated. Well, you got so much on it. The view itself is my own little world, my own miniature world. And I really feel good when I create a scene and I stand back and I look at it, and it looks pretty good. You know, and I feel like I'm actually, you know, a lot of times it might sound funny, but I'm there.
For 19 years, Frank Parks has enjoyed N-scale railroading. He offers enthusiasm to everyone.
Go out there, get started, and have fun.
Are you having fun?
Definitely. I love it. I wouldn't be able to make it without it. The trains give me my natural high.
We hope you've enjoyed Model Railroading in America, N-scale. If there's an N-scale railroad you'd like to see featured, write us at 208 Pine Lake Avenue, LaPorte, Indiana, 46350. Thanks for watching.